Beneath the myths of gods and monsters lies the shadow of a man. What if Hercules wasn't just a myth, but a man whose story was twisted into legend? For thousands of years, Hercules has symbolized strength and perseverance. He was said to be the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, cursed with trials that seemed beyond human endurance. But could he have actually lived? Ancient writers like Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus recorded tales of Hercules not as a divine figure, but as a hero remembered across cultures. Some even suggested that Hercules was not a single man, but a title given to great warriors. From Greece to Phoenicia, from Egypt to Rome, his story kept resurfacing, changing slightly, but always echoing the same themes. A man of incredible power, courage, and tragic destiny. Why would so many different civilizations tell a version of his tale unless it was rooted in something real? Perhaps Hercules was not the lion slayer of myth, but a warrior king whose conquests inspired generations of storytellers. Maybe he traveled further than the Greeks imagined, leaving traces of his legacy in lands beyond the Mediterranean. This chapter opens the question: was Hercules simply a fantasy born of imagination, or was he a real man whose legend grew into immortality? As we unravel his story, each clue will bring us closer to the truth, between myth and memory, between God and man. 12 impossible tasks, or 12 hidden truths. They weren't just stories, they may have been coded history. The 12 labors of Hercules are among the most famous myths of all time. From slaying the Nemean lion, to capturing the golden hind, to retrieving Cerberus from the underworld. These trials sound like pure fantasy. But what if they were never meant to be taken literally? What if they were symbolic retellings of real historical events? Some historians believe each labor reflected challenges faced by early Mediterranean warriors. The Nemean lion might represent a real tribe known for wearing lion skins. The Hydra could be a metaphor for hostile forces, cut one down, and more rise to fight. The Stymphalian birds may have been invading armies, remembered as flocks of deadly foes. Even the capture of Cerberus might describe a dangerous journey into enemy territory, where returning alive was nearly impossible. The labors, then, weren't fairy tales. They were coded history, stories of survival, conquest, and human endurance, passed down through generations. Over time, storytellers transformed battles into monsters, turning a mortal warrior's struggles into the divine trials of a demigod. What makes these myths powerful isn't whether they were real monsters or not. It's the possibility that behind every labor lies a grain of truth, an echo of a man who fought, endured, and triumphed. At the edge of the world stood two great pillars, beyond them mystery. Beyond the edge of the known world lay the pillars of Hercules and perhaps Atlantis. To the Greeks, the pillars of Hercules marked the end of the known world, the Strait of Gibraltar. Here, the Mediterranean opened into the vast Atlantic, a place both feared and revered. Ancient sailors believed crossing beyond the pillars meant entering lands of wonder, danger, and perhaps even paradise. Plato himself ties these pillars to the story of Atlantis, the legendary city that sank beneath the waves. Could it be that Hercules' journeys west inspired the Atlantis myth? Some traditions claim Hercules performed labors near this region, battling monsters and shaping the geography itself. Legends say he split the mountains to create the strait, forever marking the boundary of human exploration. But were these just myths, or do they hint at real voyages? Archaeologists suggest ancient Mediterranean sailors reached as far as the Azores, Canary Islands, and even beyond. If Hercules represented a great explorer or conqueror, his name may have been linked to this gateway to the ocean. The Pillars of Hercules, then, aren't just a geographical landmark. They're a symbol of humanity's eternal push into the unknown, and perhaps a key link between Hercules, Atlantis, and forgotten civilizations lost beneath the sea. A hero who defied death must also have a grave. If Hercules was real, where is he buried? Legends of Hercules' final resting place echo across the Mediterranean. Thebes in Greece claims to house his tomb, yet ancient sources also place it in Tyre, or even Cadiz, Spain. Alexander the Great once visited a supposed shrine of Hercules, eager to link himself to the hero's legacy. But were these shrines symbolic, or did they protect the remains of a man whose legend outlived him? Historians suggest that rulers often claimed Hercules' tomb as their own political weapon. To be associated with the strongest man in myth was to inherit divine legitimacy. Yet this raises a haunting question. If Hercules truly lived, then his bones, or at least traces of his existence, should exist somewhere. Archaeologists search temples and ruins, looking for evidence. Some say the tomb lies hidden beneath layers of forgotten ruins, perhaps under ancient sanctuaries dedicated to Hercules Invictus. Others argue that Hercules' death was never meant to be literal. He was said to ascend to Olympus after his mortal body perished. But what if that divine ascension was just a myth to cover up an ordinary burial? Somewhere, under stone and earth, may lie the remains of a man once believed to be half god. His tomb could be the final piece of the puzzle, proof that Hercules was not just a story, but a life lived in flesh and blood. In the land of pyramids, even Hercules left his mark. Egyptian pharaohs claimed Hercules as one of their own. Surprisingly, Hercules appears not only in Greek mythology, but also in Egyptian records. Travelers in antiquity noted temples where Hercules was worshipped under different names. Some even equated him with Egyptian gods, such as Shu or Ra. Why would Egypt, with its own pantheon of gods, honor a foreign hero? Historians suggest Hercules may represent a warrior who journeyed into Egypt during a time of cultural exchange. Perhaps he was remembered as a conqueror or as an ally whose strength impressed the pharaohs. The Greeks themselves often merged their gods with Egyptian ones. Herodotus writes that Egyptian priests spoke of a Heracles who lived centuries before the Greek version, hinting that the myth may have older African roots. If Hercules was remembered in Egypt, his story was more than Greek imagination. It was part of a shared memory of a man whose reputation stretched across nations. Statues and reliefs showing strong warrior figures have been interpreted as Egyptian echoes of the hero. Could Hercules have walked along the Nile, leaving behind not just legend but physical influence? If true, it means Hercules wasn't confined to Greek soil. He was part of a much larger, interconnected ancient world. Strip away the gods, the monsters, the magic, what remains? Behind the myths may have stood a real warrior, flesh and blood, not divine. If we ignore the impossible, hydras, lions with impenetrable skin, three-headed dogs, we might glimpse the real Hercules. Many scholars believe he was originally a great warrior, perhaps a Mycenaean chieftain, whose deeds were exaggerated by centuries of storytelling. Warriors often became legends, and legends often grew into gods. The Mycenaean age was filled with powerful warlords, capable of feats that would appear superhuman to later generations. Hercules may have been one such man, a conqueror who fought rival tribes, hunted dangerous beasts, and traveled far beyond his homeland. His weapons, described in myths, could be real relics of Bronze Age warfare. In this light, the labors of Hercules become distorted memories of campaigns, battles, and hunts. The immortality of Hercules is not divine. It is historical. He lived on because people needed to believe in him, because his story embodied the eternal struggle against chaos and hardship. By seeing Hercules as a man first and a myth second, we bring him closer to reality. He may never have been Zeus' son, but he could have been a warrior whose strength and courage left such a mark that history refused to let him fade away. Could Hercules have battled the mightiest empire the world has ever forgotten? Was Hercules a hero of Atlantis or its destroyer? Plato described Atlantis as a powerful kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, destroyed in a single day and night. But what if Hercules himself was tied to this legend? Some myths suggest his labors brought him into conflict with powerful Western cities, echoing the memory of a clash with Atlantis or another great maritime empire. One theory suggests that Atlantis was not a single city, but a memory of lost Bronze Age civilizations, maritime powers that dominated trade. Hercules, remembered as a conqueror, may have fought against such powers. In later myths, his role was exaggerated. Instead of defeating a rival kingdom, he toppled an entire empire. The Greeks often used Hercules to explain distant lands. If explorers reached islands beyond the Mediterranean, they might have attributed these discoveries to him. Over time, his association with the edge of the world grew stronger, eventually tying him to Atlantis itself. Did Hercules destroy Atlantis? Or was he simply remembered as a hero who ventured further than anyone else? Either way, his legend is inseparable from humanity's oldest mystery, the lost world beneath the waves. He was not just a Greek hero. Rome made him a god. Hercules didn't die in Greece, he lived on in Rome. When Rome rose to power, it adopted the Greek gods, but Hercules became something more. To the Romans, he was Hercules Invictus, the unconquered one. Roman generals prayed to him. Emperors built temples in his honor, and his strength became a symbol of Rome's own might. Why did the Romans embrace him so fiercely? Perhaps because Hercules represented everything Rome wanted to be: unstoppable, disciplined, larger than life. Roman soldiers carried amulets of Hercules, believing his spirit would protect them in battle. Even the founding myths of Rome, through Aeneas, were linked to the hero. This adoption also suggests Hercules was not just a Greek invention. He was remembered across the Mediterranean, transformed to fit the needs of each culture. In Rome, he was no longer simply a demigod. He was the embodiment of conquest, a guardian of empire. Through Rome, Hercules' story spread even further, carved into stone, painted on walls, celebrated in festivals. His memory became immortal, not because of Zeus, but because Rome carried his legend to the ends of its empire. On the western shores of Europe, Hercules may still be waiting. Spain hides one of the greatest Hercules mysteries. Ancient writers claim that Hercules journeyed to Iberia, performing labors and even founding cities. Cádiz, on Spain's southern coast, was said to hold a great temple of Hercules. For centuries, sailors offered prayers there before crossing the Atlantic. Some even claimed his tomb lay within its sacred grounds. Archaeological evidence shows that the Phoenicians who settled in Cádiz worshipped a god very similar to Hercules. Temples dedicated to Melkart, a Phoenician hero god often merged with Hercules, once stood proudly along the coast. Could these temples conceal the true origin of Hercules' cult? If Hercules was real, Spain may have been one of his last journeys, or perhaps where his story ended. Ancient legends describe shrines, altars, and tombs tied to the hero. Some believe his burial site still lies hidden under Cádiz or nearby ruins. Spain's Hercules mysteries remind us that the hero's legend was not confined to Greece. His memory stretched across the ancient world, leaving behind whispers of temples and tombs. Perhaps, somewhere along those forgotten shores, lies the final resting place of the strongest man who ever lived. The greatest mystery of all is deciding what Hercules truly was. So, was Hercules real? After exploring myths, history, and archaeology, the answer may not be simple. Hercules could have been many things at once. A warrior whose memory grew into myth, a symbol adopted by countless cultures, and a timeless figure embodying humanity's struggle against impossible odds. Perhaps he was a Mycenaean general, a Phoenician explorer, or a forgotten king. Or perhaps he was never a single man at all, but the fusion of many heroes, each remembered under one immortal name. What matters is that Hercules endured. His story crossed borders, languages, and centuries, becoming a bridge between myth and history. Even if his tomb is never found, even if no proof emerges, Hercules lives on, because humanity needs heroes. He is a reminder that strength is not just muscle, but resilience, courage, and the will to rise again when the world seems impossible to conquer. So is Hercules a man, a myth, or a memory? The answer may be all three. And maybe that is what makes him immortal.